All right, we're going to talk about reharmonizing using just tritone substitutions today. And we're going to do this over the tune All the Things You Are, which is a classic jazz standard. If you don't know it, go learn it. Now, before we jump in, you should probably know how to just play through the tune using even very basic spread voicings. When I say basic, I mean just including the melody and the essential tones, like the third and the seventh. Maybe something like this. It's just something simple. And so then you'll be ready to add things to it, right? Now, let's talk about tritone subs real quick before we start applying them. A couple things to know about tritone subs. Let's say in the key of C, to keep things simple, you have a 2-5-1. And if you want to do a tritone sub, you would substitute that G7 for a D flat 7, right? It's just a really satisfying resolution, right? That kind of thing. Now, the tritone sub is typically going to be Lydian dominant. Now, why is that? Well, because the tritone sub, the way it functions is that it's a substitution of the dominant chord, of the 5 chord here. And so if we take our basic 5 chord, we get like a Mixolydian thing, right? But if we want to spice it up, we could use what's called the altered scale. So we're flatting pretty much everything, right? And so the Lydian dominant scale is actually the same exact notes as that, right? So D flat Lydian dominant, which is the tritone sub of G, is really just the same notes as G altered that's starting on D flat. So you could think of tritone subs as literally the same as the dominant chord, but altered and also with a different root note because of that satisfying half-step descent. Right, once again, really satisfying half-step descent there. So keep that in mind. We're gonna try to make all of our tritone subs Lydian dominants where we can, and we can't always because of the melody note. And so we'll do our best though. Let's jump right in. We are gonna start with just, the beginning. We're gonna do this kind of like 2 systems at a time here, 8 bars at a time. So let's jump right in. F minor. If we want to do a tritone sub of B flat minor 7, it works out perfectly here because the melody note, being this A flat, now becomes the 13 of this B Lydian dominance, right? Which resolves to B flat minor 7. So you see that bass motion? So D7, B flat minor 7. And look at the way I'm voicing this. I have the root notes and I have the essential tones here, right? The 3rd and the 7th. The right hand, I have the 9, the sharp 11, and the 13. The shortcut way of thinking of that is the major triad that's a whole step above the root. So you can just see this D flat major triad. Now that's not the only way to do this here. You can also just land on the tritone sub and then resolve, right? Because the melody note, sorry, I'm recovering from a cold. Because the melody note is this D flat now, or C sharp, however you want to think of it, is now the 9th of this B Lydian dominant. So it works out perfectly well. It's also worth mentioning that Lydian dominants function best when the melody note is one of the extensions, either the 9, the sharp 11, or the 13. One of the notes of that major triad I just talked about. So let's keep going. I'll do that one. Okay, and then I can do a Lydian dominant here before the E flat 7. Can you see it? It's going to be some sort of E chord, E dominant. And if my melody note, if I'm still holding this D flat, the melody note is now the 13. So it's going to work out perfectly well. I'm gonna voice it like this. Right? Even spicier without the root note. Oh yeah. And then. And look at that. When the melody note moves to this G sharp, it's still within the E Lydian dominant scale, so we're all good. Before I go to A flat major, I can do A Lydian dominant. Look at the way I'm voicing this. I have my essential tones here. So let's remove those so you can see what's left. Another essential tone here, the flat 7. Now I'm left with a 9 and the sharp 11. I don't have a 13 in here because if I were to put a 13, I'd probably put it here. But now I get this. I don't want that. Nasty dissonance. Now, that's not to say you can't use that. Maybe if you're doing some movement, right? Making little melodies, right? That's a little different, but I wouldn't just smack all that down. Anyways. Now, going to this D flat, I don't feel like there's any good options for a tritone sub here. Now, you might say, oh, that's the flat 7. I could do D7. Yeah, you could. But then you get this. That G really throws it off, I think. So if you do decide to do this D as a tritone sub, D Lydian dominant, you gotta do something about this G. You know? Or just change the melody note. That's fine. Right? Don't worry. So, but I'm just gonna skip it for now, okay? Just go straight. Of course, there's many ways to harmonize, but remember, we're sticking to tritone subs. Oh yeah, we do this A flat Lydian dominant before we get to our G7. Right? So we have bum, 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 bum. Right? Then, you guessed it. D flat Lydian dominant, right? This is how I'm voicing it. I got my essential tones here. In the middle, I'm left with the 9 and the sharp 11. Right? I wouldn't put a 13 for the same reason I wouldn't do it over the A7. Right? When the 7th is the melody, that 13 not gonna work so well. So that clash. Anyways. And cool, there you have it. We have tritone subbed everything except for the A flat major 7 going to the D flat major 7. Sorry, recovering from a cold. Okay, let's move on. Now, this next part is basically a transposition. Right here. So let's move through this quickly. So same thing, right? And then before the F minor, you do this G flat Lydian dominant. Then before the B flat 7 coming up, you could do B Lydian dominant. Then before the E flat 7 coming up, you could do E Lydian dominant. But here, remember, just like earlier when going from this A flat to this D flat, there's no good choices for tritone subs, so I'm just gonna skip it. So. Now we're on this A flat major, so I could probably do. All right. It's kind of a thick one here. I'm doing this B flat Lydian dominant. Quite clustery. We're kind of pushing it here. I probably wouldn't do this voicing any lower than this. Like, it feels A. Now it's getting really lost there. But if your melody note was this 9th, but an octave higher, then you could do something like this. So, part of knowing how to voice really well is knowing how you would voice the same combination of melody notes and bass notes, but in different ranges of the piano. So here, this is probably the best way to include all the notes of the Lydian dominant. Let's go back to the A flat. Right. So here, there's no strong option for a Lydian dominant type thing. These are our only melody notes in this moment, right? None of that is going to give us a strong Lydian dominant sound. So I'm just not going to do a Lydian dominant. But maybe I could do something else. Maybe I could do like... Right. That's just E flat 13. Right. Again. I guess that's not bad. It's just not typically something I would do. But it goes by so fast, right? Right. You can even, if you want more spice, you could even do like an altered type thing. Right. To another altered. Right. Let's keep it simple. I'm just gonna do this E flat 13, right? And then here, I don't have a 7. Once again, if I put a 7, I think this is starting to get kind of muddy. You know, actually, on a keyboard, you could get away with it. But on pianos, usually, once you get to like D and lower, the 7th starts to get pretty muddy. So, out of habit, I just wouldn't play it. Right? Here. Oh, let me see. Here. Yeah, we're just really low here. So we don't have many options. Maybe you can already tell now that I'm trying to do a Lydian dominant thing going to G. But a lot of these notes get redundant, right? I would voice it like this, like kind of like we did earlier, right? This is a great voicing, but the melody notes are going to be the same notes coming up like. So maybe I'm just going to do just A flat 7, really simple here. And then we have, before we get to the E7 sharp 9, which should sound like, right? Oh man, go away, Croft. Oh, where am I? Instead of just going straight to E7, we do the tritone sub that. F Lydian dominant. You see I got my essential tones, and then the G triad right there. And now I'm gonna have to voice this differently to here. Right, the E7, maybe too many 7s there. Yeah, that's cleaner. And then, before A minor, let's do our B flat 13, right? Typically when the melody is a third, you know, I don't really like that sharp 11 in there. See, it's kind of weird. I mean, you could do the 7th, it sounds better. Double the third. But I like the sound that's 13. All right. Anyways, let me change this for y'all. Pull this up a little bit. Here now, here. So we have, where are we at? I can move a little quicker now. So this is E flat Lydian dominant before the D7, right? One more time. And then to our D7 with the flat 9. Got an A flat 13. Once again, look, the melody is a third, so I'm not going to do a Lydian dominant. And then same thing, the melody is the third, so I'm just gonna do this voicing, right? Just G13. And then Lydian dominant before the B7. Melody is the 13th, so I can get this fully loaded Lydian dominant. Essential tones here, D triad here. Let's do that again. Now let's go to our B7. Look, the melody is the third for this F7 as a tritone sub to E, so I'm gonna do the same voicing I've been doing. And then now tritone sub going to the C. The melody is the fifth over here. I can do, right? So since the melody is the fifth, I'm not gonna include a sharp 11 because I don't want that. Maybe it's not horrible, but generally, I just don't want this sound in my voicing. Right? But if you're creating melodies, then you know that's different. Okay. And now look, the melody note is still this G sharp. All right. So now I have to go to this C7 altered, C7 sharp 5. It's still melody here. And next, we're going to F minor. Same melody note. I could do G flat Lydian dominant. Still there. And then finally, boom. Okay, let's see what that sounds like in context. So I could do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, moving on. Let's just get the whole last part in. A lot of it is just repeated from the beginning. So let's move through that quick. Right. And now we're gonna go from the G flat to this G flat 7. Okay. So we could just do this, right? G Lydian dominant. Where was that? Yeah. And look at this. This chord is already Lydian dominant for us. It's G flat 7, 13. It's not a tritone sub, but it's still gonna function as a Lydian dominant. Because usually when you have dominant chords that don't resolve normally, like in a 5-1 motion, it's gonna be Lydian dominant. There's exceptions to that though, but we're not going to get into that today. Just know that for this G flat 713 and all the things you are, you do want to aim for this Lydian dominant sound. Anyways, and then from there, you go straight to this D flat Lydian dominant, right? That takes us to C minor. Now, there's no good option to do Lydian dominant while the melody is the third here, flat third. So let's just do an altered thing, right? So we get some sort of tritone sub. And here, oof. So look, got my essential tones down here. Got my D flat triad, right? So we have this B Lydian dominant, which takes us to B flat minor. And then this E13 takes us to our E flat 7. And then A Lydian dominant. All right. Whew, I think we made it all the way through there. Well, that's a lot to unpack if you're new to this, all right? So a couple of things to keep in mind is that when you have these tritone subs, you want to try to make them Lydian dominant if you can. And there's good and bad ways to voice those chords. I didn't go into detail about that here. But if you are interested in learning more about how to specifically voice those chords and whatnot, stay tuned because I probably will make a video about that. Or you can also check out my free training, which I'll link down below. And there you could also learn more about my coaching program and potentially working with me, where we go over all the different voicings, when to use what voicings. And I have worksheets and documents, PDFs and all that for you. So stay tuned and check out the links that I'll provide down below. And then last thing is trying to tritone sub everything, I think is a great first step to reharmonizing, okay? But yeah, you got to know the good voicings. Just take what you learned here and see what you can apply, okay? Happy practicing.